Welcome back to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings on the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and whose musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can listen to on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. He and I are recording this week's show on Sunday, July 21st, 2024, and kind of a big news day. And in fact, Drew and I were just pre-gaming, largely because the political events of the day have kind of eclipsed any animation news. So it's going to be kind of a short news segment this week. But not to say that there isn't good news out there. Did you see where Inside Out, sometime in the next week or so, will become the highest grossing animated feature of all time worldwide?
Well, my question when anybody says that is, will it eclipse the live action quote unquote Lion King remake from 2019?
Yes.
That is the true test, because technically that is still the highest grossing animated movie of all time. Let's see what that.
Well, it's
do they have what number it will hit this week?
Well, again, what's interesting is it's currently sitting at 1.44 billion. And the thing that they keep pointing out is Inside Out 2 hasn't even opened in Japan yet. It won't open in Japan till August 1st. So the assumption is that right now the movie to beat, traditionally considered animation, Frozen 2, that's 1.45 billion. So the notion is, okay, even before it opens in Japan, it's going to roll past that number. But yeah, it's so interesting that you mentioned the live action, the computer generated version
the
of
photo real.
There we go.
Yeah.
Because what's interesting is the trades have begun to break that out. That just in covering what's going on in animation, they literally walk that information out that, yes, technically, the photorealistic version of Lion King has earned more money, but there's some controversy about whether or not that should, in fact, be considered an animated film. So we'll see going forward here. The other news, of course, is Despicable Me has slid past the $500 million mark and is now closing on 600 million. So Despicable Me 4 marching along there. But obviously the big news for this coming week will be Comic-Con. And we're going to talk briefly here about some of the panels that are coming up. But speaking of the news section of Fine Tuning today is brought to you by touringplans.com. If you're headed down to Orlando anytime soon, touringplans.com can save you time. More importantly, can save you money and give you great information as you wander around the theme parks that surround the city. Beautiful. So if you're headed down that way anytime soon, please head on over to touringplans.com. Also, before we get started on talking about San Diego Comic-Con, want to remind folks that my co-host, Drew Taylor, will be hosting a Jurassic World Chaos Theory panel on Sunday. Do we have a room for this one yet?
Yes, we do. Hold on, let me get it for you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
It'll be in room 6DE.
Oh.
And we will be joined by cast members Darren Barnett,
Mm-hmm.
Sean Gianbroni, Kassar Mohammed, Rainey Rodriguez, Paul Mikkel Williams, and Kirsten Kelly, along with executive producers Scott Kramer and Aaron Hammersley. So we're going to do a Q&A, and then we're going to show the first episode of season 2, and there will be a giveaway if you weren't already enticed enough.
All right.
So, yeah.
I always enjoyed that part of San Diego. It was always interesting to fly out of San Diego, say the day or so afterwards, and watch everybody who had the same damn swag bag that was overloaded with stuff, and they decided to make it their carry-on. unless you were the first 10 people.
Try to plead with the TSA.
There we go.
I swear to God, this is a carry-on.
Yeah.
Let me on.
It just never quite worked out that way. And speaking of Mr. Taylor, who, remember, previously on the show we've talked up Drew's upcoming Art of Books. We of course have your Ultraman, the art and making of Ultraman Rising, which is coming out December this year, and then your Amphibia book, which is coming out March of 2025. Well, and interestingly enough, on Sunday, in fact, what's kind of interesting, just down the hall from you in room 6A, Sunday from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m., we've got an Ultraman Rising panel, which Channing Tindall and Ashima, they're going to be there to talk up this animated feature. When is your Jurassic World Chaos Theory panel again?
That's at 3, so you can go to both. You can go to both. I'm not hosting the Ultraman one. I think that's Bandai is putting that on. So you're going to get a look at the movie as well as the amazing merchandise that is both available now and coming soon. So how's that for a little tease for you? But yeah, you can go to both and you'll see me there. I'll probably be at the Ultraman one too. So yes, say hello if you spot me. I got to go by, what's his name's booth? Bill Stout.
I was actually about to ask about Chris Sanders. Do we know if Chris is coming? Because again, I remember.
I don't think he has a booth this year. Yeah.
Dang, because you went to Annecy this year, and you were mentioning that you didn't manage to get his making of How to Train Your Dragon book, right? Or it's sketchbook, or
because I tried to get it at Lightbox last year, and of course the one time I'm there, he's at lunch. So I didn't get the book, but
okay.
I think I can secure a copy, and if I can secure 2, Jim, even better.
Thank you.
I will
mail
one off. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But again, they just back to the Ultraman Rising. Of course, that animated features over on Netflix. And speaking of our streaming services, Apple TV Plus, they're doing a panel this year at Comic-Con that celebrates the 75th anniversary of Peanuts. And what's interesting is that they're going to do, and this is but the first day of Comic-Con, the Thursday, and this will be a 10 to 11 a.m. panel. So, gotta set your alarm and get there early.
Who is there that early? I don't know.
See, that's the thing. It's like, I feel bad when somebody has a panel at 10 a.m. on the first day of Comic-Con. It's like, oh, pal, flip somebody a 20. Get hell, a Finn. Just get a better date and a time. All right, and well, obviously, again, Comic-Con is always about the big movie franchises, and I think we've Drew and I have talked previously about Marvel's coming back to Hall H, but also DC is there in a big way as well, and not just because James Gunn's Superman movie is almost wrapped production at this point. They've got I want to say on 3 separate days they've got big animation panels. They've got Friday. Now, mind you, the better slot, 8:15 to 9:15 p.m. So it's after the day is wrapped and people are looking for stuff to do. But they've got a panel about the Harley Quinn show and Kite Man. Then on Saturday, and again, a little early, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., they've got a panel about My Adventures with Superman. And now, mind you, just to be clear here, the Harley Quinn panel will be in the actual convention center, room 6BCF, whereas My Adventures with Superman, that's actually going to be across the way at the Hilton Bayfront in the Indigo Ballroom. That tends to be a kind of a hotspot for animation-related panels, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's a good-sized room too.
Yeah.
I remember I've seen many things in that room over the years.
Yeah, same thing here. Same thing here.
Yeah.
But but again,
What's the third one?
third one is the series we were just talking up, the Batman Caped Crusader. Now, mind you, you got to go back over to the convention center. This is again in room 6BCF. But Matt Reeves is going to be there, and a Minnie Driver, and evidently it's going to be the world premiere screening for this show, followed by a Q&A. And
what day is that? You're burying the lead here, Jim.
Okay, Saturday.
Okay.
But again, that was the point I was trying to make there, that on Saturday morning, 10 to 11, the adventure with Superman, and then Saturday afternoon. But yeah.
I've seen all of Caped Crusader so far.
And?
The first season.
Yeah?
It's amazing. It's as good as X-Men 97. It is a
holy cow
continuation, an elaboration, and a maturation of Batman the Animated Series in its themes, in its action. I mean, it is unbelievably great. I don't even know if I'm supposed to say that yet, but I don't care. I'm going to start banging the drum right now.
Wow.
For this show. It is absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, just get ready.
Okay. And Drew was kind enough to try to work out a plug earlier for our pal Bill Stout, who Brian Gahn, my co-host of the Looking at Lucasfilm podcast, he'll be helping to man the booth there. That's in booth number 4803. So lots of...
Jim looks like he just pulled that out of his mind, too, which is very impressive to me that you remembered 4803.
I got 5 brain cells left, Drew. Though I meant to, in fact, speaking of burying the lead, at the, I should have mentioned at the top of the show, Nancy and I, this past Friday, actually went out to the movies. We went and saw Inside Out 2 in a theater.
Wow.
In fact, we paid full price. They didn't do the senior citizen discount. Even did our part to support the theater. We bought overpriced popcorn and overpriced sodas and sat down and then watched the 25 animated related trailers in front of the film. Yeah, a lot of stuff coming up, but really did enjoy it. That Nancy actually said that she enjoyed Inside Out 2 more than she enjoyed the first film. But
wow,
you know, I that said though, look, you got to assume, given these numbers, and we were just talking about Inside Out 2 sometime in the next week or so becoming the highest grossing film, asterisk, except for that photorealistic Lion King. They're going to turn this into a really real franchise, right? We're going to see another one of these.
I think so. It doesn't. I mean, it's so perfect to kind of just revisit. It's like the Before trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can just revisit her life every few years and see where she is and all of that. But 2 of the movies that you saw trailers for undoubtedly also have huge panels at Comic-Con that you have not mentioned yet. There is a Hall H Transformers 1 panel on Thursday. Mm-hmm. So, you know, obviously that is the hall that I, you know, desecrated last year with my Ninja Turtles panel. Okay. And then there is a Bad Robot panel on Saturday afternoon, which I believe is in the Hilton. But double check that to make sure I'm okay. But 2 very exciting, wonderful movies and 2 very exciting panels, I'm sure. I think they're both hosted by Anthony Bresnikan from Entertainment Weekly.
Cool. Okay.
Did they ask me to do it? No, they did not. But, you know, we're sweeping that under the rug.
Okay.
And,
okay. I mean, you're the busiest man paneling in Hollywood. They did. They assume he's already booked.
That's it. That's it.
Okay. So now, speaking of pop culture events that feature animation-related events, I guess at this point, given that all of us have tried to book our panels for the D23 Expo, we should be talking that up as well. That's now what? Basically there's a breather of a week to 10 days between when Comic-Con ends and when D23 Expo begins. And of course, they'll also be showcasing 2 of the films from the trailers I saw on Friday. The Moana 2 Well, and there was no trailer for Zootopia 2, but I feel like that's only minutes away.
Did you see they're showing the first 2 episodes of Win or Lose?
I did see
The
that.
Pixar? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Now, where this gets interesting is what? First night of D23 Expo, August 9th, is when they're doing the entertainment showcase at the Honda Center. So, and that's when we'll get to see Moana 2, or something from Moana 2, something from Zootopia 2, that sort of thing. But I have to say, what I appreciate about this year in particular with the D23 Expo is Disney is trying to spread the love around. I mean, have you seen, for example, the schedule for the premiere stage where again, it's not just Disney. That for example, there they are putting the animated the 20th century animation shows in the spotlight. Bob's Burgers, Futurama, and The Simpsons. Likewise, there's going to be a Marvel animation sneak peek. So I would imagine we'll get to see even more of the X-Men 97. On the other hand, over at the archive stage, I guess we're going to get a tease of. Have you heard about this documentary that's in the work about the Goofy movie, the Road to Lake Destiny?
No.
Yeah, Bill Farmer was telling me about it just recently because, I mean, Bill always has all these wonderful stories about working on the Goofy movie back in the 90s, and just the effect of, well, they kept calling me back, and I didn't think it was going to. I was so surprised when it was that good, and they're assembling a really for real documentary of the making of this thing. Likewise, over on the archive stage, I think, weren't you just talking up this book, the Directing Disney, the Pete Docter book that's coming?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, Pete's going to be there talking about, this is the first time somebody's done an in-depth look at all of the men who directed animated features during Walt Disney's tenure at the studio. So what is it? That's David Hand right through to Wooly Reitherman, right?
Yes, we can't stress men enough.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of men smoking cigarettes and making these movies.
Well, but at the same time, they are trying. If you go over, for example, to the Hyperion stage, there's a panel that's going to be held there about the pioneering women of Disney animation. This is the same space where they'll be doing showcasing unusual artwork from Disney's Animation Research Library. Likewise, they'll be talking up restoring Disney animated classics. Meanwhile, over at the backlot stage...
Boy, we haven't heard about that enough, have we, Jim? We have not heard enough about how they restore Disney animated classics. Boy, D23 always charting new ground. Goofy movie, restoring animated projects. Wow.
Well, no, it's interesting you say that, because whenever you talk to anybody who works this side of the street, the restoration stuff, and I don't know if you do get to chat with any of these folks, but to hear some of them talk today about the botched restorations from like the 80s
Yes.
and the 90s and the
Yes.
tools they have now and what they did to the color balancing and the film grain, and I mean
I will say we are starting to swing in the opposite direction to a more faithful representation of these movies. But you're right. I remember it just, they were like kind of smoothing everything out. And I think the recent 4K restorations of Snow White and Cinderella are a really good idea about what we can hopefully look forward to in the future. And a great place to get that information, I'm sure, will be this panel, because I think Eric's part of it.
I believe
and,
so.
Some of those folks.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is the modern Disney company, and I don't know if you've actually seen the schedule for the Disney Plus Pavilion. And literally for all 3 days of the D23 Expo, if you go to the Disney Plus Pavilion and you want to get online, you can get your photo taken with some poor sweaty teenager in the Bluey costume and the Bingo costume. And this will be, literally the full 3 days. That's your only option because that's how big Bluey is for Disney Plus. And I just at the
They need to get him into the parks. I don't get it, Jim. What is the holdup?
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I know that there is that Bluey stage show that's coming that actually does the Timon in the Lion King stage show thing where it's a puppet of the character with the performer clearly in view behind it. And it seems to be, but again, I don't understand. It's like, wait a minute, if you're going to have Bluey as a walk-around character at the D23 Expo, why is it they can't be at the parks? Again, I do not understand this.
Yeah.
So,
if they cross Catella, that's it, Jim. They cannot do it. They will be shot on site.
There we go. Stay at houseboat. Stay at it. All right. Anyway, beyond that, you mentioned Eric Goldberg that if you go to the Pixar and Disney animation studios sort of activation in the Anaheim Convention Center, Mark Hamill will be doing signings. Eric Goldberg will be doing signings. Ron Clements. You'll also be able to sit in on discussions of Moana 2 and Zootopia, and because again you need Comic-Con like swag to take home with you. They're giving out pennants, they're giving out Pixar balls, and then finally, have you seen yet the Big City Greens movie, the Spacecation thing that I guess is coming to?
I haven't. They actually played it at Annecy on the outdoor screen, which was very cool, and there was a lot of people outside, but I was, of course, running between things because, as Jim said, I am the busiest man in Hollywood and the busiest man in Annecy. So, yeah. No, I'm excited. I would love to see that. I know they're screening that. Did you see that they're also doing a panel for, I don't know if it's a panel or a discussion or a signing for the mysterious Pixar 2026 movie that they will actually announce on Friday and then have a thing at the booth?
No. I mean,
this is a very exciting project that I cannot wait for people to learn about. But yes.
This makes me think of, was it the 2009 or the 2011 one where they had the thing that was hidden behind the fabric in the Disney animation booth, and they
it was the gigantic beanstalk.
There we go.
Yeah.
And I love.
I think it was 2016 maybe. 2015, something around there.
Okay, because I just remember once they pulled down the cloth, and they literally had a soundtrack for this thing that if you stood in the booth every so often, you would hear a giant in the distance doing the fee, fi, fo, and lightning and that sort of thing. So, all right, well now I got to go by the booth early to see what's hidden behind fabric. Okay,
exactly.
Thank you for the heads up. Okay. So, all right, that brings us to the end of the news portion of today's show. And though that said, we did have some sad news. Just this past week, we lost Bob Newhart, the legendary comedian, at the age of 94. And again, it says a lot about who you are and how you lived your life, that at the age of 94, people were saying that, we lost him too soon, that they really liked that guy. But given that we talked just last week a bit about the Rescuers, I thought we'd use Mr. Newhart's passing to do a return to the Rescuers just a little bit, because there's still some meat on that bone. There's still some stories that Drew and I have to share. But before we do that, we got to do this. And we're back. Okay, so Drew, on last week's show, we talked about the Rescuers, but we did not talk about how Bob Newhart got cast as Bernard in the Rescuers, and kind of an interesting story. He had literally just completed the first season of the Bob Newhart show on CBS, which debuted September of '72. Would eventually run for 6 seasons on CBS. Was a good, strong part of their Saturday night lineup for that entire run. But Disney reached out to him and wanted to talk with him about, we've got this mouse in this movie called The Rescuers. And now, mind you, when they're bringing Newhart on board, the movie's still very much in flux. This is still when Louis Prima is supposed to be voicing that polar bear character, that Bernard and Bianca are supposed to be traveling to Antarctica to rescue him at this point. He's being held captive by a bunch of really mean penguins, which... Did you ever get to see the Bluth film that what got taken away from him, that he never actually got to complete it the way he wanted to do it, The Pebble and the Penguin?
I have seen it. I don't remember anything about it.
There we go.
That was a rough period for Don Bluth.
That tells you
exactly.
pretty much all you need to know about it. But yeah, that was, I want to say Martin Short and Jim Belushi doing voice work for that. But I want to say that Bluth, this was when he was in Ireland and he had a studio there and they ran out of money. And I want to say they had maybe a third of the movie done and farmed it out to third parties to finish it. And yes, it looks like it. All right. Anyway, so back to The Rescuers. And again, we're talking about 1972, 1973. In fact, in the Disney annual report that was published in December of 73, the company is just now starting to talk up this movie that'll be coming out in 4 years. And it says that Bernard and Bianca are troubleshooters at the Prisoners Aid and Rescue Society, not the Rescue Aid Society. Also, who Bernard and Bianca will be going up against is a mysterious and villainous woman who lives in a decrepit mansion in the swamps of South America. So again, not a dilapidated steamboat, which is not parked in the Devil's Bayou off the American Gulf Coast, but rather a decrepit mansion in the swamps of South America. And again, Drew, given everything you do covering the Mission Impossible movies, have you ever seen the early version of Illusion of Life, the Ollie Johnston, Frank Thomas book? Because they go at length about the Rescuers, because that's the movie that's in production while they're writing the book. And they actually have a section in the book that describes this scene where, well, at this point, The Rescuers is really Mickey Mouse meets James Bond. It's, again, the notion is that there's this secret society of mice that live in the basement of the United Nations, but they do all of these spy-like missions around the globe, freeing prisoners and kidnapping victims. So in the James Bond film tradition, Bernard and Bianca effectively go to Q's lab, and there's the scene where they're handed all of these gadgets that they're then supposed to use for the human-sized villain they're going up against. And anyway, back to Bob Newhart now. Bob, when he was interviewed about working on The Rescuers, flat out said it was one of the weirdest jobs he ever had. That, basically every year for 4 years, and this would have been 73 to 77, Disney would send a car, they'd bring him over to the lot, they'd put him in a recording booth alone, and he'd be handed 5 typewritten pages of script, of dialogue, which he'd then read aloud. And he'd give the guys in the booth a couple of different takes on intonation or delivery of that sort of thing. And then he'd go home. And I guess Bob wasn't particularly good at looking at storyboards and figuring out what was going on. It's that he just worked off of the script. But again, he just had no idea. I have no idea what this movie's about. It's a little mouse who goes, ooh, climb in the boat. Now, mind you, at Disney Studio itself during those 4 years, very interesting time. The people who are running feature animation at this point are keenly aware that the people who make most of the team who makes this movie, these movies for the company, are rapidly graying. They're approaching retirement age. Disney needs new blood. So just as work wrapped up on Robin Hood in the fall of 1973, Disney reached out to art schools around the U.S. and let them know that they were now looking for the next generation of animators. And off of that solicitation, hundreds of portfolios were sent to the studio and reviewed. And out of all those applicants, 60 young artists, and I think, as Drew just pointed out, mostly white males, were selected to come take part in a training program that was held on the Disney lot in Burbank. Now, and what's interesting about this, Drew, is this is 2 and 3 years before Cal Arts starts up its own character animation program. So this is Disney literally doing this on the lot to get people. And after an extensive and intensive 2-week-long training program, 12 young animators were selected to continue on at Disney. All of the others were sent home, with a handful of folks who were later tapped to either work in Disney's story department or layout. So basically only 1 in 5 made the cut. But even then, these new young animators, who obviously still had a lot of training to do, weren't allowed to work on the Rescuers. Their apprenticeship was actually spent working on the next Winnie the Pooh featurette, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, which would be released at theaters in December of 74 on a double bill with Island at the Top of the World. And speaking of December of 74, that's when the next edition of the Disney Annual Report came out. And at this point, Disney shareholders were told that the young college students that the studio had recruited into our animation apprenticeship program are now doing so well that a number of them are already working alongside our veteran animators on the production of The Rescuers, which, Drew, isn't to say that these young people were actually happy. There was actually a lot of frustration with these kids because there was this double standard thing going on. They kept being told that their animation wasn't, the stuff they were doing needed to be better. It needed to be like Snow White and Pinocchio type quality. And so they were told to study those films. But here they are working on The Rescues, where clearly corners are being cut. I mean, for example, well, the opening of The Rescuers, the title sequence that has very little actual animation in it. It's mostly cameras moving over. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're beautiful pastels. They were done by Mel Shaw. They look great, but they're not animated. And these cover how the bottle that Penny throws into Devil's Bayou eventually makes it up to New York City Harbor. Likewise, a decision was made, again, in order to save time and money on the production of this animated feature. A decision was made that, we could save a few bucks and it would make life easier if Bernard and Bianca didn't have whites in their eyes. And they were the first animated characters, lead characters in a Disney animated film in years where that didn't happen.
So they were redesigned for the sequel, because they do have whites in their eyes.
There we go.
And
that tells you a lot about that. The interesting thing is the young animators who hung on, because again, that movie came out in 91. Whereas the original Rescuers came out in 77. By the time, what is that? That's 14 years. They'd risen through the ranks, and it's like, okay, Bernard and Bianca are going to have whites in their eyes this time around. Also, another reason that there was grumbling in the ranks, again, think about it. This is Louis Prima's Polar Bear character has been cut from the Rescuers, but the people working on this film are actually getting pressure from upper management about Disney that it's like, look, the audience who comes to our movies, particularly our animated features, they're going to expect to hear a certain guy in these films, and which is why the creative team on The Rescuers was told that they needed to create a part in this movie for Phil Harris. And what's interesting, this isn't a John Ratzenberg in Pixar or an Alan Tudyk in the modern Disney film thing. It's not a question of this is our lucky charm. This is management going, look, Phil Harris voiced Baloo in Jungle Book, and then he voiced O'Malley the Alley Cat in the Aristocats, and then he was Little John in Robin Hood. So for 10 years, he's been a consistent part of our animated features, a very prominent voice, and audiences are going to expect to hear him again. So you need to create a part for Phil. And so for a time anyway, the swamp volunteers, those what is it, possum and mole and turtle that help Bernard and Bianca in the finale of The Rescuers when they do battle with Madame Medusa and Mr. Snoops, they were supposed to actually be led by a character called Colonel Bullfrog, who was to have been voiced by Phil Harris. Now, again, luckily, due to budget cuts, because this is Disney, they're kind of freaking out because the cost of making The Rescuers has risen to $7.5 million. And that just seems at the time prohibitively expensive. So the Colonel Bullfrog character just gets cut again because they're tightening the budget. And other things that got cut. We were talking about the scene in Q's lab, and strange, really strange bend on the story. Even after Colonel Bullfrog got cut from The Rescuers, if we jump ahead to when The Fox and the Hound is in development at Disney, and this is now 78, 79, the same note comes down from above to the effect of, look, you guys need to create a part for Phil Harris. And we talked on last week's show about how Phil was supposed to play a male whooping crane who then did a song with Charo. And Drew, you're going to love this. In between the weeks that we did the show, a veteran Disney animator who wants to remain unnamed proceeded to tell me the story of this song, which, God, this is the actual title of the song that got cut from The Fox and the Hound for the mating dance. It was called Scooby-Dooby-Doo, Let Your Body Turn to Goo. And the other thing that he said, that this is something that he's seen once, and he says it's in the Disney vault and it's never coming out. But I'm sure you've seen the live action reference footage of Louis Prima and his band dancing on a soundstage at Disney. They actually used it a couple times for live action reference. They used it for the Jungle Book, and they used it for the Aristocats. Well, they did something like that with Charo. They put her on a soundstage, and they asked that she wear a leotard, and they then had her perform a dance to the Scooby-Dooby-Doo song, and it's now and again, you got to understand, it was shot with video from the late 70s, so it's really grainy, but even with it as grainy as it is, you can see around the walls of the soundstage are many senior members of Disney upper management and feature animation at the time that turned out to watch Charo dance in a leotard. So, not.
I was going to say, is this like a stag film that is being passed around by perverse elder statesmen?
Yeah, it was not Disney's most shining moment, and like I said, it's in the vault and it's never coming out. Anyway, a couple of quick other rescuer related stories to share. We talked on last week's show about Catfish Bend, that the full-length animated feature that Ken Anderson was developing for Disney, that he was hoping would be the film after The Rescuers, but he was just having trouble convincing Disney upper management that a Song in the South-like story would play to modern audiences, and that's actually why the Swamp Volunteers, those the Jackrabbit, the Mole, the Turtle character we were talking about earlier, the ones that were supposed to be led by Colonel Bullfrog, that's why they all look and sound like they're good, close, personal friends of Uncle Remus. This was something that Ken sort of strong-armed the team into doing, so that those characters were supposed to be an on-screen tryout for the world and the characters of Catfish Bend, which, again, this is as far as it ever got. Beyond that, this is the first ever Disney animated feature that features songs that the characters don't sing. You hear songs in the background being sung, but and again, this was done because they didn't have to lip sync the songs. They didn't have to animate the characters singing the songs, which kept the cost of the movie down. Then, to again, kind of the cherry on the sundae here, The Rescuers comes out in the summer of '77, 3 weeks after the original Star Wars, and Disney management thought, "Oh my God, we're screwed." They just did not see Star Wars coming, and here was this box office phenomena that family audience was embracing, and it's like, our brand new animated film just doesn't stand a chance against something like that. But then, Drew, this weird thing happened. The Rescuers got the best reviews that a Disney animated film has gotten since Snow White came out in 1937. Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times called Disney's The Rescuers the funniest, the most inventive, the least self-conscious, the most coherent and moving from start to finish film that Disney Studios has made in decades. And Variety hailed The Rescuers as the best work by Disney animators in many years, restoring the craft to its former glories. And as a direct result, The Rescuers grosses $16.3 million in the United States. Also, an enormous hit worldwide, grossing $48 million at the global box office. And in France, Drew, it actually outgrosses Star Wars in the summer of '77 and was the biggest hit of the year.
Sacre bleu!
Yeah, there we go. And
I cannot believe it.
All right, now I need your German, because it's the biggest hit of the year in West Germany. But jawohl.
Oh.
There we go.
Yeah.
But and again, just sort of bring this full circle, a lot of the reason that this movie worked as well as it did, especially here in the States, was Bob Newhart's wonderful vocal performance as Bernard. It had the very same strengths as Newhart's stand-up. It was wonderfully underplayed. It was very dry. I mean, the character managed to get big laughs, but at the same time, you were solidly in his corner during the emotional moments. And just one last little side note here. When Bob Newhart's lifelong friend, Don Rickles, reached out one day and said, "Hey, there's these guys from Pixar. They just called me, and they want me to voice Mr. Potatohead in this movie they're making. It's called Toy Story, I think. And should I do it?" And Newhart, who, by the way, had just finished voicing Bernard at that point for The Rescuers Down Under, the sequel, told Rickles, "Look, I'm going to lie to you. It's the weirdest job in the world. They're going to hand you 5 pages of dialogue. It'll be a year, and they'll call you back and give you another 5 pages, and you will have no idea what you're doing at the time. But once you see the finished film, it'll all be worth it." Speaking of seeing a finished film, Drew, have you ever seen that 20-minute long documentary that Judd Apatow did about Don Rickles and Bob Newhart's friendship?
No, that sounds right up my alley.
Oh, it's just in the past week or so, obviously with Mr. Newhart's sad passing. It's begun to bubble up online again, and it is so great because it's Bob and his wife Ginny, and what they do is they pull out the family home movies of the Newharts and the Rickles on family vacations, and they share all of these wonderful stories. And there's like one final Disney-related story. In fact, you can go to this documentary and hear Bob himself tell this. But it's Rickles and Newhart who have taken their children to Disneyland. And so they're standing there getting their picture taken with the walk around Mickey in the park. And near as I could figure, given the way they're having Mickey talk, this is the original Mickey for the park, the one that Walt himself hired, Paul Castle, who is the famous stogie smoking, hard drinking guy. So Bob describes how Mickey, the guy inside the Mickey suit, starts talking to Newhart and Rickles, and it's like, oh, do you know how freaking hot it is inside of the suit? And they're like, Mickey, be quiet, the kids. And then he says, oh, the kids, you know when these kids grab me in this outfit? And it's like, Mickey, be quiet, Mickey. So, but yeah, it's worth it alone to check out this 20-minute long, just 20 minutes, but wonderful little documentary from Apatow. But please check that out. And again, on behalf of Mr. Taylor and myself, we extend our sincerest condolences to Bob Newhart's friends and family. Again, a great man, and as I mentioned earlier in the show, it says a lot about you when you're 94 years old and people say you left too soon. So, okay, but just on sad moments like this, we look for things to entertain us, to distract us. And if you're looking for something like that, if you have not yet listened to Drew's wonderful Light the Fuse podcast, folks, honestly, every time I listen to one of these things, and again, I make my living studying entertainment history, but Drew gets people to tell stories that they've never told before. Kind of like this Mickey talking about how freaking hot it is in the suit. So
that's right. If our guests have the same tenacity of a chain smoking, hard drinking Mickey Mouse, then we're doing something right.
Absolutely.
We're in a little bit of a holding pattern right now, but I mean, we have plenty of shows that you can enjoy. Hundreds of shows, in fact. Yeah.
No, this is a binge-worthy show, folks. In fact, if you're doing a road trip, I mean, the only thing is, I will just stress this: you will, when you finish listening, you're going to want to go watch a bunch of Mission Impossible movies. I mean, that just the stories they tell, you're going to want to circle back and look at individual scenes, and because you'll learn a lot about how these movies came together. But anyway, speaking of podcasts, we also have a bunch of them here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network that we'd love you to check out as well. We have, of course, Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. Likewise, we have the Epic Universal podcast that I do with Eric Hersey, who produces and edits a lot of the podcasts here at Jim Hill Media. We also have the I Want That Too podcast, which is about Disney merch, and I do that with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. And in fact, Brian Gaughan and I just recorded a feature about the Acolyte, but we need to do our news section. We'll be doing that tomorrow, so look for a new episode of that, looking at Lucasfilm podcast coming up soon. And also want to
just keep me out of it, Jim. Keep me out of the Acolyte conversation, okay? We don't need that anymore.
I will say this. I had never done what I did with the Acolyte. I got busy the past couple of weeks, and I got so far behind, I decided I would do it all in one swoop. I binged all episodes over a single day, and that was brutal. I mean, that was a really dark show with very little here. In fact, I don't think there's a laugh in the entire show.
Well, if you laugh at that little rat guy who's running around, I guess
the tracker.
He provides some
my god,
lols. Although I didn't understand his motivation.
No one did.
But
no,
yeah.
And in fact, that just it's been interesting over the past weekend to watch the Leslie Headland talking about it. It's really important to get on social media if you want to have season 2 of The Acolyte. It's like, okay, I don't see that happening. But anyway, and speaking of video related stuff, I also want to remind you we do have Disney Unpacked, the show that Len and I are doing with veteran Imagineer Jim Schul. That's our part of our Patreon effort, and This month, we're taking a close look at Paradise Pier and its transformation into Pixar Pier. And in fact, we'll be recording a show tomorrow, which we'll talk about. Have you ever seen the concept art for when they were going to redo California Screaming as the Disney Villains Funhouse coaster?
No, that sounds interesting.
It was.
Were there any characters on popsicle sticks like they had, like we ended up with now?
No.
Were there actual animatronics? That's what I want to know.
No.
Okay.
No, but you were going to. I think the scream tubes that are on the California Screaming were going to be rethemed. One you were going to basically fly into Maleficent's mouth when she was a dragon, and the other one I want to say you were going to fly into Jafar's mouth when he was a snake. So, but yeah, nobody on popsicles.
You'll appreciate this, Jim. You know that I live so close to Universal that I actually get these good neighbor letters in the mail from them.
Really?
And they are assuring us that the screams being emitted from the Fast and Furious coaster will be dampened by some new technology that they've got. So yeah.
Well, no, it's so interesting you mentioned that because yes, it's the same technology that they use for Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind at Epcot. You know, how they kept talking about the storytelling coaster, how they would turn the car so you'd be looking at just the right thing. What Universal is doing with its Fast and Furious coaster is at all of the scream moments, they're deliberately turning the car so they face into the park, so they will not be screaming out toward Toluca Lake. All right, they'll be screaming.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, into the upper lot. So yes, that they are
Wow.
sincere in their efforts, and you got to start sending me those good neighbor letters. Okay.
Oh, I will.
All right. And speaking of things that folks need to do, folks, if you could do us a favor, Mr. Taylor, myself, if you get over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review, well, not just the show you're listening to right now, Fine Tuning, but also Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. That would mean a lot to myself and Mr. Taylor. Beyond that, social media-wise, Drew, where are you these days?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter mostly at Drew Tailored. But yeah, I am everywhere and I am nowhere. I'm like the shadow, Jim.
That's a deep cut.
Yeah.
Okay. Me, I'm on X, Twitter, whatever. Likewise, Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. And that's going to do it for now, folks. But again, a reminder, this coming Sunday at San Diego Comic-Con in room 6DE. Is that right?
So, yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. It's at 3:00. I'm really, the people that I am like begging to come are like people trying to get cheaper stuff on the floor, trying to haggle with people who don't want to take stuff back. But you know what? They'll be there after the panel. Just come to the panel. You're going to see an episode of season 2. Season 2 is really great. You'll learn all about Chaos Theory, and it's kind of a coming out in some ways because Camp Cretaceous kind of came out during the pandemic, and the actors have really not had a chance to talk to fans and interact in that way. So I think it's going to be a really special panel. So come on out.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, that finally get to actually meet with people. So, okay. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks for listening. And Mr. Taylor and I will be back soon.